My name is Jeremy, right? And that's what I'm known as, but what am And I think that the only way I can really truly answer that is this. I'm a human being who has experienced a very wide spectrum of emotions through my life. That's really all I am. And I think that's the reason I became ultimately a counselor, is because, you reach a certain age in one's life and in one's recovery, at a certain age, certainly, where you look ahead and you look back and you think, okay, well, what am I doing here? What is my purpose on earth? I always thought my purpose on earth was to be around, well, what you have here, cameras, lights, etc. Didn't work out for me, I became an addict. I became an alcoholic, addict, you name it, and with a lot of behavioral issues as well. I am a broken human being who has risen from his own pile of ashes like a phoenix in a relatively short space of time, taking into account that from now until the day I die, I will be a work in progress. That's essentially who I am. It just so happens that I'm 60 years old, I'm Welsh. For those of you who don't know, that means I'm British. My purpose on earth right now, I feel, is to convey the message of hope to whoever wants it. Because as recovering alcoholics and addicts, we need to want to change. Without that core component, none of us are going to change. I needed to want to change. And initially, I was very, very resistant to it. I was angry. I was uncomfortable in my own skin, like I always had been. It just so happens, at the age of 54, I was uncomfortable in my own skin for having been a crystal meth addict for God knows how many years. And through a twist of fate, some would say voodoo, some would say which I ended up being in treatment and given the chance to experience a renewal. But I was a child who also needed that experience of renewal, and this child didn't have the I didn't have the opportunities. I didn't have the wherewithal to realize that the way that I thought and the way that I felt about the world at large was really, individual to me. I thought everyone felt that way, But I did believe that I didn't fit in nonetheless, because I had all these feelings, In many ways, I continued to have, and I call them baseline feelings. Feelings that, say, for instance, somebody who is recovering from this disease, right, gets clean and sober, physically gets sober, okay? They're leveled. They're brought back to baseline. Well, that's okay when you're an active addict, but once you've gotten rid of the drugs and the alcohol, you can't stay in that baseline for very long, because being at that stage only means that you were the very person who needed the drugs and alcohol to begin with. I think the first drug that I really experienced as a kid wouldn't necessarily be classified as a drug, but it was certainly the need to escape. I needed to escape. I had a horrific schooling, apart from the bullying and the emotional, psychological abuse inflicted upon me and so many of us by the teachers. And there were other environmental factors of it. Plus, to be honest with you, I think I came out of the womb feeling like I didn't exist in this earthly realm anyway. Hence the lifelong fascination with science fiction. But I started, the first drug I ever did was alcohol. I picked up a drink when I was 14 from the parents' drinking cabinet, There was really no drugs around back in those days. If there were, it was, in the area I lived, it was hashish. And even then, now, you had to be a lot older to know where it was, to know how to, drugs weren't a thing for my generation at that age. I started drinking when I was 16. And from the minute I went to the clubs and pubs and I put a drink to my mouth, I knew, automatically believed that I felt different. I felt like I could fit in. I was one of the boys. I could chat up the girls. Life all of a sudden got better for a very limited amount of time. It became very apparent in a limited amount of time that that alcohol was not the solution to my problems any longer. Primarily because it made me angry. And whenever Jeremy gets angry, Jeremy does stupid things. He walks on top of cars, he puts his hands on people he shouldn't put his hands on. who were twice as big as him. You know, that he gets upset. I'm either in a state of anger or in a puddle of tears, both of which are extremely unappealing. I attempted sobriety, and I was able to stay sober periodically, off and on, for a number of years, without necessarily ever having bottomed out as an alcoholic. Therefore, my actual recovery was relatively little meaning to me. Years later, at a time when most people are putting down drugs, I decided to pick them up big time and started a crystal meth habit. And when that happened, it was like, Mamma Mia, Nirvana. It was like somebody opened the Pandora's box, and I took to it like a duck to water, you know? Everything I'd ever wanted to be, a filthy deviant mixed up with kind of laconic, charming British gentleman, all wrapped up into one. And people in the San Fernando Valley, from Sunland to Reseda, didn't know what the hell to make of me, and I liked it like that, you know? And I played that game for a long time until my body could no longer take it anymore. Bearing in mind, for the bulk of this time, my alcohol and my drug usage was a secret. Nobody knew, aside from a couple of chosen people. People just thought of me as an eccentric. Oh, Jeremy just happens to clean the car at 3 a.m. He just happens to take all these computers apart and never puts them back together again. You know, it just so happens that he has a skin ailment where he seems to be developing all these pocket marks. Nobody seems to know why. You know, the usual fucking scenarios. And eventually I was forced into recovery, and I didn't immediately want to. Even though I wanted to get clean and sober, I knew I was destroying my life. I knew I was destroying my family's life, even though they weren't fully aware of the extent of my addiction. They became aware of it at the end, but I knew that changes needed to be made if I was to live into old age. And so I needed to refurbish myself, both on obviously a physical level and a psychological level, also on a spiritual level. A friend of mine I used to work with came here for an extended, I think she was there for like 18 months. That we're talking now, I think 2016. And so when I started working at a different recovery center, initially, she was my immediate supervisor. I loved her to bits, and she would always talk about this program, talk about Rabbi Mark. And so when it came to like wanting, I needed to change direction in terms of where I wanted to work, the kind of population of people I wanted to work with, the scope of treatment I wanted to be around, and so I always get Beit Teshuvah in mind. I don't think I've ever been anywhere where treatment-oriented, where the clients are offered as much opportunities as they are here, not only to get the wide diversity of programming, the consistent level of therapeutic care that they get here, which is pretty outstanding, opportunities to advance within the structure of Beit Teshuvah, to gain X amount of recovery time, to become a program facilitator as an intern, to get hired as well, to become hired in other areas of Beit Teshuvah, to be allowed to flourish creatively, which is something else that I don't see anywhere else. That's pretty remarkable, to be honest with you. It is crazy, it is chaos, but somehow or other, this chaos seems to work. I have known recovery since 1986, when I was 22. As of right now, I have 5.5 years of recovery. In fact, today, I have 2,000 days of recovery. Some might ask me, I think justifiably, well, if you were in recovery in 1986, first of all, don't you feel all those years were wasted? And no, I do not. This is a conversation I have with many of our clients here. It's like, no, I don't. It's like, first of all, it's just my life. I am but one drop in an ocean full of drops, And every single attempt at recovery throughout my life has been but a stepping stone. That I couldn't be the person I am now unless I had suffered all those defeats in the past. I couldn't help people the way I can now unless I had had those defeats. So from that point of view, I must embrace my history of relapse and not hide it or feel ashamed by it or reject it, if that makes sense. I want to let the gang, the community of Beit Teshuvah know that I am exactly the same as you. There is no difference between me and the guy that comes in here day one. It's just that, as it happens today, I have 2,000 days and a newcomer would have 24 hours or less. That is the only difference between me and you. and recovery is possible. If you want it, if you feel desperate enough to get it, that is a blessing. So we're on this journey together, folks.